So the question was, what would happen if someone contributed to my live stream? In what capacity?
Well, on YouTube, you could submit money and get premium super chats on YouTube during live streams. So
let's find out. If you want to supply me with a premium endorsement or whatever you just called it, I'm cool with that. I am pretty sure that monetization of my live streams have been turned off. So I don't think you can do that. I'm not cool enough to monetize. And YouTube said no.
Hey, Pat. So I have a question, right? If I'm in the middle of working something and I have a question and I need to talk to you about it, and I happen to have the ability to broadcast to Twitch, would you be willing to look at that to figure out what I'm doing wrong, actually in person wise?
It will be 24 hours later.
Maybe you're sitting, alone at home, nothing's going on, and you all of a sudden get a call from a student that's like, hey.
Yeah, the chances of that happening are low.
Because you actually have a life.
I have a life. I have a very active personal life. My beautiful wife and my two lovely sons dominate 100% of my time when I walk out that door. So I'm not, someone asked me, hey, what video game are you playing? And I'm not playing any video games right now, man. I have a 3- and a 6-year-old in my house. I get about 10 minutes of free time a week, okay? So, no, not the answer, right? Not the answer. All right, back to 3D modeling. Yeah. Okay, so if you're not done with your Parthenon, don't freak out. Like I said, you still got another 7 days to get it done. Most days in here, now that we're kind of getting into the body of the course a little bit, most days in here are going to start like today, right? Where you just sit down and start working, okay? I'm a big, big believer that the only way to learn 3D modeling is to do as much 3D modeling as we can. And I think these times like we had, just now are really valuable where there's just lots of questions, okay? So I'm going to single out Sarah. Not that she did anything right, but she kept apologizing first. She's like, I'm sorry to ask questions. I'm sorry to... No, that's my job, is to answer your questions. Don't feel sorry. You're not disturbing me. It's like, I have nothing else to do, okay? This is my job, is to help you and answer your questions. So don't feel sorry, Sarah. You're not doing anything wrong, okay?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is not insult, but I've never, ever heard anyone say, I'm sorry, after asking a question, whether it doesn't matter.
Oh, I hear it all the time. I get people apologizing for questions all the time, and I'm sorry for apologizing. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. All right.
If I know you just answered that question, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, even then, sometimes you got to hear the answer 3 or 4 times for it to sink in, and I understand that, okay? So one of the things that I want to start talking about today in the context of our homework is how to start editing more complex shapes, okay? I'm a big believer that 3D modelers need to work smart, not hard, okay? We have to be like good chess players, often thinking 8 or 9 steps ahead of the game, okay? This takes some practice and some skill and a tremendous amount of experience to get good at it, and that's kind of why you're here, right, is to get that practice time and that experience. This week for our homework assignment, you're going to be making this train, okay? Which is kind of like the Parthenon on steroids, okay? In order for us to get to a spot where we can create photorealistic models that suspend disbelief, we have to start by really understanding proportion, okay? And spatial relationships between a whole series of parts and pieces inside of our scene. As you just experienced, our models are not just one thing, they're like 80 different things, right? They're a whole bunch of pieces all kind of smashed together to create the illusion of a model, okay? These are not functional sculptures, okay? And really what I'm saying here is that you're not going to send our models to an engineer and say, poof, okay, here you go, hope it works, right? That's not what we're doing. These are illusions, right? Especially here in Maya, these are illusions. This is not a CAD program. Our models are not fundamentally created with the intention of being fabricated. We work in a unitless world. Maya understands feet and inches, kinda. It kinda understands feet and inches. So try to separate your idea that it has to be exactly 2 feet by 3 feet by 10 feet and this many millimeters. This is not that space, okay? It's really a creative space, okay? This work environment. We can get that level of accuracy, but at times we just want to make things look proportionally correct, okay? So today's conversation is going to be about a couple things. It's most importantly going to be about managing a lot of objects, okay? Because as you just discovered working on the Parthenon, it's kind of tricky inside of Maya managing all of these objects, right? Grouping and duplicating. These are things that are kind of our bread and butter type activities, but there's some pitfalls that we need to overcome to ensure that we're doing it correctly and cleanly. We want to make sure that what we're building is editable, right? There's no sense in building this uncontrolled beast. We want to be able to control the chaos a little bit. So our conversation is going to revolve around how to manage a lot of objects in our scene. In addition, we're also going to look... Oh, sorry, the music is still on in the background. I was like, what in the world? We're also going to talk about how to start editing our shapes a little bit as well, okay? Because, spheres and cubes, those are kind of cool, but we need to start adding some interior detail that will allow us to create more compelling shapes based off of the simple beginnings that our models are comprised of. Make sense? Everyone kind of understanding the scope of today? Real quick, let's just jump back over here to the assignment sheet on Canvas. So like I said, we're going to be making a basic train, and we're going to be making this little train. And I've given you guys a couple of things that are kind of fun. Give you a 10,000-yard view as to what it is that we're building. So I've given you some pictures on the assignment sheet of the goal, the target. I've also given you the backdrop image. So we're going to talk about how to use our backdrop images inside of Maya to create our models from. This is kind of fun. I do this from time to time on the projects in here, especially the ones that I'm kind of facilitating and encouraging you to build. I use a service, and you should too, called Sketchfab. Okay? And Sketchfab allows you to upload your models, okay? And you can see it in 3D, which is pretty neat, so you can cruise around it. I'm a big fan of the Sketchfab service. It's a lot of fun. I've just kind of recently gotten back into it. I have a couple models for this course that I've embedded in Sketchfab. If you want to check it out, and I encourage you to do so, they provide an academic license to students for free, which is pretty cool. You don't get the full spectrum of products and what have you, but there's a lot of really great stuff on there, and you can do a tremendous amount. This is just a small, very basic illustration of the stuff. I've been putting some of my more recent stuff on here. Like here's my Stegosaurus. I did this last year, and it's a big model, and it takes a while to load. But it's cool to be able to see these sculptures in 3D and kind of move around and pan and check them out. So I'm into it. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. So check it out. It's good times. It's good times. All right. So that's Sketchfab. So enjoy it. This is a good way to see specifically what it is that we're striving to build in 3D. Now, when it comes to modeling things, and let's go to the resources section down here at the bottom. When it comes to modeling things, we always want to try to find some good reference images that are going to be our guide. Okay? As 3D modelers, it's our responsibility to recreate reality, in finger quotes. I think it was last week in this class that I mentioned that we set the entire foundation for the show, right? We're the first crew that's hired on a television or a feature film, right? An animator can't animate a single thing until we make the character, okay? The lighting directors can't place the lights in the scenes or the cameras and start doing their set layouts until we build all the set pieces in the environments. So we are really the people that generate the aesthetic and the look of the entire film, okay? It's a big responsibility for us. So in this goal of trying to recreate reality, and I want to put reality in finger quotes, right? Okay, because it could be our reality, the reality that we're seeing, right here, or it could be the reality of some distant, far-off planet 2,000 years in the future, right? The concept team in the art department figures out what that reality looks like, and then we physically have to make models for all of it, okay? The fastest way of getting to that result is to use pictures, reference image, okay? Reference, reference, reference. I'm an old school 3D modeler. I've been doing this for 20 years. I fundamentally believe that if you're not modeling with reference, you're modeling wrong, okay? A lot of folks, they get a little uncomfortable in this because it feels like cheating, right? And because if you take graphic design classes, usually one of the things they first think, it's like don't copy someone else's work, right? Don't trace, that's bad, okay? No. In our world, we trace, okay? We flat out trace images. Yeah.
Kind of changed a bit.
Good. I'm happy that it is, because we want to be able to use images like this, or maybe even a blueprint or a whole series of photographs to lead our decision-making process. You know, everyone has an idea of what a car or an airplane looks like until I ask you, hey, Izzy, go make an airplane, right? And then Izzy will probably go, what does an airplane look like? How big is it? How big are the wings in comparison to the fuselage? How big are the, the wheels on it in comparison to the fuselage? There's a lot of questions there that we need to have answers to in order for us to make a 3D model of it, okay? Now, we certainly could do this on our own, but it's going to take twice as long, the results are going to be half as good, and the model is generally not going to be something that we want to use, okay? There's going to be a lot of problems with it. So reference is going to be our good starting point, and reference images like this is something that we want to use, okay, as often as we can, because now we can transform this reference image into a tracing guide, okay? And in the Maya world, these are going to be called image planes. And I'm going to show you here in a second how to take this image and load it into Maya. Load it into Maya, and so that we can see it in the viewports and use it to build our models. Because from this picture, we can see exactly how big the wheels are, how big the fuselage are, where all the details of the train intersect to create the illusion of the train itself, okay? We have to turn into almost little subject matter experts on the things that we're going to build so that it looks believable, so that it suspends disbelief, okay? It doesn't have to be photorealistic, but someone needs to look at it and say, hey, that's a train, okay? If they say, hey, that's an airplane, and you say, it's supposed to be a train, mission failure, okay? Mission failure. All right, let's jump in and take a look at how we're going to use this. So this is just a JPEG, or excuse me, this is just a PNG, okay? Maya accepts a whole spectrum of different file formats to be loaded in as an image plane. But let's walk through this process really quickly, because it's simple, but there are a couple landmines that you can step on if you're not careful, okay? Some of you guys were experimenting with the awesomeness of the quad view, okay? Oops, I hit the, there we go, the quad view. And let me just throw some geometry in here real fast. That way we have a point of reference, okay? The quad view is an excellent place to model with, okay? And if you look at the quad view, it tells you very directly which orthographic view of your three-dimensional scene you're currently looking through. We've got the top, we've got the front, and we've got the side, okay? We want to use these orthographic views and load the image into those orthographic views, okay? So if we zip back over into preview real fast and look at the perspective of the train in the picture, oops, I think I closed it. Any apologies. So what orientation or what view of the train are we currently looking at? The side view, right? So we want to put this picture in the side view in Maya so that we can use it to very quickly block out all of our geometry, okay? Let's jump back over into Maya real fast. All right, now luckily for us, it says it down here, side, okay, in this panel. Now, if I wanted to make this side view full screen, how would I do it? Spacebar. And there's one thing that we need to be just mindful of before we hit the spacebar. When we click in all these different views, you see that light gray boundary cycling from where I click? The active viewport is the viewport that has that light gray boundary. So if I have that light gray boundary around my side view and tap the spacebar, that's the view that's going to be maximized and brought full screen. Okay? And I like to do this. My eyes are getting old, right? And I have a hard time seeing things in little windows like this. So I got to make it big so I can actually see the verts and work on the models themselves. So I got a nice big view here. This is an orthographic view of our three-dimensional scene. If you try to orbit in an orthographic view, are you able to do it? No. See, I'm holding down the option and left mouse button, and you probably saw a little pop-up that says, orbit not available in orthographic view. This is almost like a two-dimensional view of our three-dimensional scene. We're stripping out one of the axes, and if you look very carefully down here in the lower left-hand corner of your viewport, you can see that we're only plotting points and seeing the y-axis and the z-axis. We're not seeing the contents of the x-axis in this particular scene. So let's load this image in real fast. It's super easy, and it begins with all the pull-down menus in the actual viewport itself. The View menu is where we're going to go. Check it out. Down here. Bloop. Okay, and it's at the very, very bottom of this long list, and specifically, we're in the image planes section. This is going to bring open the Autodesk Finder, which is admittedly a little different. And some of you guys were banging your head against the Autodesk Finder because it's a little bit different than a lot of the other finders that we see in the the OSs of our world, right? It's radically different than that of the Mac OS Finder, and Windows Explorer is a little bit different as well, right? So check it out. This is how it works. We have a whole series of bookmarks in the upper left-hand corner. One of the bookmarks that I would encourage you to look at, especially here on the Mac, is the desktop, okay? We're going to talk about the project directory going forward. This is something that has a very specific and important role inside of our 3D modeling toolset, but we're not going to go over it today. So this is what allows us to navigate the project directory. And we can also use a little explorer bar at the top of the screen. So it just takes a little bit getting used to. It forces you to be a really good computer user and know the contents of your system very directly. But with a little practice, it should be pretty good. Now, I've stored this image on the desktop, so I'm just going to load it in and hit open. And then voila, there it is. There's my backdrop image. Okay, it's just chilling inside of my side view of my three-dimensional scene. Okay, I'm going to tap the space bar again to return to my quad view. You can see that it exists inside of perspective. And we can also see that green line. I have it selected at the moment. So if I have my backdrop or my image plane selected, you can see that it's represented in the other two as well. All right. So once we bring in our backdrop image, our image plane, there's a couple things that we need to consider, okay? First and foremost, we need to make sure that the image is positioned correctly to the grid itself. Modeling is made a whole lot easier if we kind of remember orientation and our three-dimensional kind of understanding at every step of the game here. We're going to be making geometry. I want my geometry at the origin of my three-dimensional scene, so it might be a good idea if our image plane is positioned correctly at the origin of the scene as well. Okay? Now, if you look carefully at the contents of our image plane here, it's the train, but it's also the railroad ties, right? Let's go back into the side view. You can see all the railroads and the railroad ties here as well. Okay? Now, inside of our, last week we started talking about the landmarks of our three-dimensional scene, the up, down, left, right, and all that jazz, right? Where would be a good natural place for the bottom of the railroad ties to be positioned in our 3D scene? Y0, I like it. So in the middle of the y-axis, so I hate to do this, but in the ground or on the ground, right? It makes sense. Where the grid is kind of the ground, okay, the middle of the y-axis. So I need to move and change the location of my image plane. I just did a marquee selection real fast and grabbed it. And simply hitting the move tool will allow me to move this around in my three-dimensional scene, okay? And I'm going to very carefully try to get it to a point where just right about, there we go, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. That way, when I change or when I hand this file over to an animator or maybe a set decorator, they'll immediately see all the content where it should be already placed in the three-dimensional scene. Right? We're kind of helping the rest of the crew out by initially modeling and positioning these assets in a place that's logical for the rest of the production pipeline, which is the middle of the scene, the origin. Okay? And it's going to help us understand it too as a 3D modeler, because understanding these spatial relationships is tough at first. Okay? A couple things that is kind of fun. Once again, I have my image plane selected. A number of you guys were working with lights, and we wanted to change some properties of our lights. Where would we go to change the property of a light just during our lab today? Yeah, in the attribute editor, right? The attribute editor is kind of our properties panel. It's going to show us a lot of attributes for whatever is selected. I got my image plane selected. So if I was to cruise over to the attribute editor, right here, check it out. There's a lot of stuff in here that's important to be aware of, okay? Now, I'm going to start at the top real fast because there's a couple things that I like to kind of filter and change. Specifically, it says in all views or display looking through camera, okay? If in all views is turned on, we're going to see this image plane in every single viewport inside of Maya. It's in perspective. It's inside. You can actually see it over here in the top. And we're also getting a thin line over here in the front as well. However, if I was to change this to display looking through camera side, now I'm only seeing it in this one viewport. which is really helpful, especially when we have multiple image planes kind of existing in one three-dimensional scene. This week, we're working with one image plane, but next week, we're going to be working with 3 image planes. So being able to filter which viewport gets which image plane is kind of nice. Okay? It's an attribute that's going to be helpful for us going forward. Okay. So I'm going to leave that as display looking through camera side. In addition, alpha gain. Not alpha gain. I apologize. Hold on a second. It's not alpha gain. I thought it was alpha gain. I'm going crazy here. There's a way to, and I don't remember, I might be on the wrong thing. You can actually reduce the opacity of this. Hold on. You know, this is kind of par on course. I fundamentally believe, yeah, okay. So for me, it's only working until in all views is turned on. When looking through camera was turned off, well, now it's working. That is a legit bug, which is driving me crazy. Alpha gain reduces the transparency, and now it's working. That's crazy. Point being is that it allows us to see both the model and the grid at the exact same time, which is helpful. When alpha gain is all the way pegged up to the front, at times it's going to be very difficult to see through the mesh, okay? Look at my little donut here at the center. It's a really great example. At the moment, with my alpha gain turned down pretty low, it's almost as if the image has been overlaid on top of my geometry. I can see the front side of my donut and the back side. When alpha gain is all the way pegged to 1, okay, now the back side is visible. So having that alpha gain reduced pretty significantly is going to help you continue to understand what it is that you've created. All right, let me put this back down to something low, somewhere right around in here. And let's start talking about how we can use this to create our geometry. Okay? In every sense, this is a tracing guide. It allows us to very quickly go in and continue to edit, move, and create this model. Okay? It's not going to give us all the information that we need, but it's certainly going to give us enough. Okay? For example, let's just get rid of this object, and I'm just going to create a cylinder. Okay? Now this cylinder is going to be maybe the wheels, okay? And I need a whole bunch of these wheels to start off with, okay? With the backdrop image in tow, I can start positioning this cylinder where I need it to be in order to get the result that I'm after. I'm holding down the J key at the moment to snap my axes in 15-degree increments. It is impossible for me to rub my belly and scratch my head at the exact same time. But if you were to look right here as I translate this object, it will tell you specifically the degree of rotation and how you're continuing to translate that object in your scene. Okay, so right now it says -80 or -90, which is good. So that's a nice way to get a little bit more actionable info as to what exactly it is that you're doing. Now, let's go back over into the side view. I could, if I wanted to, hit the space bar, find my side view, click, hit the space bar again. I could do that. That's totally legit, right? It's a great way of going from view to view. Has anyone discovered another way that you can change your view inside of your scene quickly? You can quad view all the time, which is fine. If you want to be in quad view, that's cool. I don't want to be in quad view because I like things being full screen and big. Here's another way you can quickly change your view inside the scene. The space bar is pretty great, but look very carefully underneath my cursor, and I'll zoom in. There's something that's popping under my cursor. Do you see that? A whole bunch of black things, okay? Let's do it again, okay? That is the hot box, okay? If you press and hold the space bar, you're going to get a whole series of what are called marking menus, okay? Let's see if I can zoom in and do this at the exact same time. Okay, so these are marking menus. What the guys and gals at Autodesk have done have basically put almost the entire interface of Maya underneath the cursor of your mouse. Okay, some people love it, some people hate it. I really hate it. But there's one part, and it really is almost everything. Like here's all the windows, you'd file, save scene as. Some people love this. This is absolutely an Autodesk convention. If you look at a lot of their other applications, the hotbox and marquee menu system is something that you're going to see in other Autodesk products. Okay? I, generally speaking, don't like this. It doesn't work for my brain, but it may work for you, and that's fine. Okay? There is one thing in here that I recommend that everyone be aware of. Love it or hate it, this button, the Maya button, check it out. It's always in the center. Whenever you press and hold the space bar, that Maya button will show up directly underneath your cursor. Okay? And if we were to simply left click and hold on that Maya button, dun, 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 what shows up? The ability to change the view of our three-dimensional scene. So now I very quickly, I can choose right view, and then just mouse up, and now I'm in the right view. Let's try it again. So we can go into top view, and now I'm in the top view. Spacebar click, perspective view, and we're zipping around. After a while, this will turn into muscle memory, and you won't even have to think about it, right? You just do spacebar click, and then flick your mouse to the right, boom, you're in the side view. Up is always perspective, so it's a fast way. After a while, you'll just get fast with it, okay? I really recommend you do that. That if you're going to use the marquee menus for one thing, use it to change your views, okay? In addition, there's one other way that you can very quickly change your viewport to represent a different view of your three-dimensional scene, okay? And that's up here in the panels pull-down menu. Here it is. We have our perspective camera, our perspective view, and then here are the orthographic views. You can even create a new one if you'd like. 6 to 1, half a dozen to another. Find one way that works for you and then get good at it, okay? There's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. All right. So I'm going to zip over into my right view real fast and use both the image plane in the background and my cylinder to start fleshing out the proportions of my wheels, okay? So from here, this is how cool working with image planes. I can just grab this guy. I can start moving it around, okay? Something like this, okay? Getting close, but man, it's still kind of tough to see the image plane in relationship to the geometry, right? It'd be lovely to make my geometry transparent, okay? So I can see both the image plane and the geometry on top of the image plane, because I'm having a tough time figuring out the diameter of this cylinder in reference to the image plane behind it, right? This is supposed to be a tracing guide, right? So it'd be good to be able to actually like trace it with geometry, right? There's one viewport setting that I recommend that you guys check out. Again, if you return to the view pull-down menu, okay? Excuse me, not the view pull-down menu, the shading pull-down menu. This is going to tell the computer how to shade the contents of this viewport, okay? As an illustration, let me just dip over into perspective so you guys can see what's up, okay? Right now, my polygons are being smooth shade. They're kind of filled in. But if I was to go into the shading menu and choose wireframe, I know it's impossible to see on the projector, but now we're just seeing the wireframe outline of all my polygons, and it's not filling the interior with some sort of illusion of a polygon. We're just seeing the outlines, okay? I'm going to go back to Smooth Shade All. This is, oops, sorry. This is what we're used to seeing. In that same vein, however, we also have X-ray. Actually, in all honesty, the two that I use the most are wireframe on shaded and then X-ray. Because what X-ray is going to do is kind of get us what we're after. Okay? It makes our objects transparent. If we zip over into our right view, there's my geometry. And with it selected, I can see the information that I need. I can see the wireframes. I'm still able to work pretty quickly. But I can see my reference behind. And now I'm just lining stuff up and making it work. And I'm pretty happy with that. Okay. Let's put this back to, I'll turn X-ray off. And then I like to have X-ray unshaded on, or wireframe unshaded. That way I always see my wireframes. Okay.
Hey, Pat.
Yes?
Is there any way to make a cylinder that doesn't have those triangles on top and just has a smooth cylinder?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of. Okay. So I've figured out the placement of this object to my reference. Left and right and up and down, I'm good to go. But the thickness of my wheel is totally off, right? Totally wrong. That's not the thickness of a train wheel. Big, huge cylinder. So I need to start scaling it down a little bit. And this is where the reference is going to end, okay? It's only going to give us information on 2 of our 3 axes. The third axis we have to kind of do ourselves. This is where we're going to use the thing between our ears, okay, our brain, and our eyeballs, and start figuring out the spatial relationships between all these parts and pieces. Our reference is only going to give us, it's only going to get us like to the 20-yard line. We got the Super Bowl on Sunday, so I'm going to use all football metaphors today. Anyone watch the Super Bowl? No, just me. Okay, it's the one football game that I watch a year. Izzy's watching the game. Yeah, I don't watch football because I don't have time, but the Super Bowl I will watch because it's just a lot of fun. It's a spectacle. It is an event, right? And I think we're going to get a new Infinity War trailer too, or Endgame trailer. So that's all I need to get me into the show, right? So the reference is only going to give us to the 20-yard line. We need to take the ball in the rest of the way. Okay, we are artists, by the way. Okay. The computer is only going to do so much. It's literally just a tool. We're here to create with that tool, okay? So I'm going to start selecting this, and I think just scaling it down a little bit. That's pretty good. Good enough for me. And now I need to begin to position this in a space in our three-dimensional scene that makes sense. Now, at the moment, there's not enough other information in my scene to accurately position where this wheel is going to go. So maybe the next natural thing to create would be like the fuselage of the train. That's pretty big, and it's a cylinder. The diameter of that cylinder is going to be created when the diameter of the fuselage is going to be established when we create the cylinder. So let's just create another cylinder. And let's position it. Let's rotate it, holding down J. There we go. Oh yeah, it's a toggle. So you turn it on and turn it off. Okay. Yes.
Is there a way to lock backdrops so you don't select them?
So the question was, can we lock our backdrop items so we're not selecting it?
Yeah.
That's the question. Yes. I want you to explore. I'm not going to go over it because it's kind of a long conversation, but I want you to go over and start to do some research on display layers. Okay. All right, so I've started to position the cylinder here to create the fuselage of my train. Now there's a couple different ways that we can continue to edit this shape to get what we're after, right? Clearly I need to make this cylinder a lot longer. I've gone ahead and I've put the front polygons right where I want them to be, but clearly the back polygons are not where I need to be at all, right? They need to be way back over here. So I'm left with a couple different options in front of me. How can I fix the cylinder to get the result that I'm after?
You can slice the face and drag it.
I like it. So we can do a component level edit, physically going in, selecting the faces and moving them back, okay? Or we can do an object level edit where we select the entire object, hitting the scale tool and then maybe just scaling it along and then moving it back. 6 to one, half a dozen to another. We get the exact same result, okay? I think I'm going to do a little component level editing and move those back. This is where the image planes really turn into a wonderful aid because now I no longer have to guess, right? I get some really good, accurate information as to where all this stuff is going to go. Now with the cylinder established, I can see in my three-dimensional scene here maybe where I need those wheels to go, right? I'm going to assume, and this is an assumption, that the fuselage for my train is perfectly cylindrical. And it is because I made it that way. But so this is actually the diameter of that cylinder, of the fuselage itself. And now I can start comparing the diameter of the fuselage, or the size of the fuselage to the location of the wheels and make some good edits. So this wheel over here does not need to be over there. It needs to be more like right here. Yep. I'm happy with that. I'm liking that. Have you guys ever watched a traditional sculptor work on a piece of clay or on a piece of stone? It's really kind of a lovely dance that he or she does with the medium that they have in front of them. But one of the things that they often do is they are starting to chip away at the big piece of marble or as they're pushing the clay. If you watch a master sculptor at work, he or she is constantly going to be moving around their shape and looking at what they're creating from as many different views as they possibly can. The more information our brain has as to the spatial relationships between all these pieces, the better the decisions we're going to make, okay? Point being, always be orbiting around your mesh and looking at how all these pieces flow and work together to create the illusion that we're creating here. It's one of the things that someone told me, that watching me 3D model makes them sick at times. And I apologize, because I'm often doing this. I'm just saying, okay, that looks good from that angle. You know, how's it look over here? How's it look from the top? Okay? Because we want to make good decisions, and we want to make quick decisions too. You know, this could take us, one of those dinosaurs, I'm working on a Triceratops. I'm really into dinosaurs. I'm really into dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are kind of my thing, right? I love dinosaurs. There was a time in my life when I was convinced I was going to be a paleontologist and dig up dinosaur bones, right? I think that was the 8-year-old dream of mine, to just dig up dinosaur bones. And I've always been interested in dinosaurs, so I do a lot of 3D modeling of dinosaurs, as you saw a second ago. And I'm working on a Triceratops right now, and I think I've put like 60 hours of work into this thing already, right? And it's just the Triceratops, it's just the sculpture. I haven't actually done the UV mapping and the texturing yet and all that jazz. Point being, these models take a lot of time, so we want to work fast. We want to have a lot of information at our disposal so that when we're placing things in our scene, we can see pretty quickly and pretty early on if they're working. Now, I like that. I'm actually just going to move to the side a little bit, and we'll call this one done. Now, I have a whole bunch of these wheels that I need to work with, right? Whole bunch of them. If you look across the mesh, you know, these two are a little bit smaller, but this one here and this one back here, those are the exact same size, right? So I need to start duplicating things. It's not about working hard, it's about working smart, right? I could create a new cylinder, certainly could, right? And then go in and move and rotate and position and scale it down. That's a lot of work, right? I've already made one that basically matches the size of the other ones that I need to have. Many of you guys found and stumbled upon this little shortcut as you were building the Parthenon, but how do I duplicate that wheel so I can use it again? Command D, yeah, and you can find that command in the Edit pull-down menu at the top of the screen. Check it out. So Edit, Duplicate, Command D. Now we're going to talk about this a little bit because there's some nuance between duplicate, duplicate special, and then duplicate with transform. Okay, there's a lot going on in all of these tools, and let me just show you what the straight up duplicate looks like. Like I said, many of you guys noticed this earlier. Bloop. Now on the surface, it looks like nothing's happened, right? But on the back end of Maya, we've created a copy of this object. What part of our Maya interface allows us to very quickly see a list of all the objects that are currently chilling in our scene? What's it called? The outliner. Where can I find the outliner? Windows, you got it. In the Windows pull-down menu. And it's right there. Okay. The outliner. Okay. This is going to show you a list of all the objects that are part and are a member of the scene. So P cylinder 3, that's the one that we just duplicated. And if I can select the other ones if I'd like. And I can continue to transform them around. So if you're looking for something, if you hit Command D and you're like, where the hell is it, right? Go to your outliner. It's a great way for you to very quickly select something from a list. The naming conventions in the outliner are kind of a mystery and are kind of silly, but once you figure out why they're being named, what they're being named, it's not that bad. What would you imagine? So I got P cylinder 1, 2, and 3, right? What's the P stand for? Polygons, okay? We are creating polygonal cylinders. That's what the P stands for. Of course, we're making a cylinder and then a number. How can I change the name of this? Actually, I'm not sure if it's in right click. Let's find out.
You double click it.
That's one way of doing it.
It's not a right click.
Double click. Here's how I do it. Hit the return key. Double click works just as well. And I can call this, I don't know, wheel. Ta-da! A little bit better than P cylinder 1. So this is the fuselage, or the boiler, or whatever you want to call it, right? I think it's a good practice to name our objects inside of Maya. Because we're going to have, I mean, go back to your Parthenon. You're going to have a bunch of these things, right? A lot of you guys were hunting and pecking and trying to figure out which was which and which was doing what inside of the scene. Name things. Protect your 3 a.m. self. Okay? You know, Many times I have been up at 3 a.m. modeling. I'll wake my wife up. My computer station's in our bedroom. My wife will be asleep, and I'm sitting there modeling away, right? And then I feel bad because the sound of like clicking and keyboarding has woken her up, and I go, maybe I should go to bed. Anyways, all right. So name things. Name things. Only you can prevent forest fires, okay? You are responsible, right? You're the operator of this machine. If you crash the machine, it's your fault. It's just the machine. Maya didn't do something. You did it, okay? All right. I think this is the other wheel. All right, I tell you what. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make some more cylinders for these little smokestacks up top, which gives us an opportunity to talk about combining and grouping, which is something that some of you guys were kind of banging your heads against during the lab, okay? So check it out. Let's make another cylinder real fast. Boop. Okay. Let's just get this into position here. Let's turn on a little X-ray. Let's give you one of my smokestacks. Something like this. I'm going to do it kind of fast. Something like that. Good enough for government work. There we go. All right. So there is one smokestack. Okay. I want to hit Command D again to make a copy of it. And this guy is a little bit bigger, and he's certainly a whole lot shorter. Something like that. Command D one more time, and I have the third one. All right, I'm happy camper. Let's go back into perspective, look at what I've made, turn off my X-ray shading. Yeah, now we're starting to get there. Okay, I'm happy with this. All of these pieces are starting to work well together. But if you take a step back and look at what we've created here, really this is one piece, right? The fuselage has these smokestacks attached to it, right? I want to start to condense all of these objects into maybe one object. I want to start combining them. We don't have to have a zillion objects sitting over inside of our scene, right? Maybe we start combining them and bringing them down, especially things that are not symmetrical, that are in the center, right? The wheels, I'm going to show you how to mirror geometry here in a second, right? But the stuff that's in the center, so like the fuselage, all of this jazz, we can start combining those into one object, okay, instead of having a lot of objects. Our brain kind of starts to hurt after a while when we got thousands of objects to manage. So let's start combining them, right? So here's what we're going to do. I want to combine all of these objects into one mesh object. What this is going to do, or let me rephrase this. What this is not going to do is like weld all the verts and attach all these pieces together. There's still going to be independent polygonal islands, okay? We're still going to have the same level of control. All these polygonal shapes are just going to be on one mesh object, okay? Now to do this, we have to be in object mode first. And the second thing that we have to do is go up to the top of the screen where it says Mesh and choose Combine. Before I hit the button, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit because I want you guys to see my outliner. Okay, four independent objects. Bloop, 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 bloop. Okay, watch what happens when I hit Combine. It's a little unique and different. It's mission accomplished, right? We have a new mesh object called P-Cylinder 5. If we were to look over here in our OpenGL viewport, you'll see that the entirety of those shapes are selected in object mode. But check it out. What in the world is all of this mumbo jumbo? What? No likey. All right? This is history, okay? This is a reference back to the original object, okay? Now, at times, when you're a super advanced modeler, you're going to want to keep this history around a little bit in case you want to separate these shapes back onto their own object. You certainly could do that. But for 9.9 times out of 10, we want to remove any reference to the previous objects inside of our scene. You're going to find that Maya hangs on to everything, right? It doesn't delete things, with the idea that Maybe you'll need it in the future, okay? But for me, and I want to get rid of all these references to those previous objects, so I want to delete the history that's associated with my new shape, okay? And this is something that you're going to have to do from time to time, okay? Every time you combine something, or if you've been modeling on something for a long, long time, it's a good practice to delete your history and kind of clean out the underbelly of your scene. In Maya, the way we delete our history is that I'm in the poly modeling shelf. It's this button right here, the one with the little clock, list, and the little X. I guess the clock on the list would maybe say like history or something like that, the past. So if the moment we hit this little button here and delete our history, watch what happens to all the objects in my outliner. They go away. This is now a completely independent mesh object. It's not being referenced by any other object inside the entire Maya database, and it's as if it's just a brand new piece of geometry sitting in my scene, okay? It's truly unlinked from the rest of my modeling session, okay? Deleting the history. This is not the only place inside of our Maya interface that we can do this, by the way, okay? This is a great, easy, accessible way of doing it, but it also lives in the Edit pull-down menu at the top of the screen. Edit, delete by type, history. The exact same command, just in two different spaces. I bring this to your attention because there's actually two different options that look very similar to each other. We have delete by type and then delete all by type, right? The one right below it. What would you imagine is the difference between them? Because when you're zipping through the menus and you just see delete, sometimes you just click on it, right? So what we just did was a delete by type history, but if you did delete all by type, now it's going to delete the history of every single object in your scene, okay? So be careful with this. At times we're going to want to delete the history for the selected component or selected object. Other times we want to delete everything. Just be mindful that there is a difference, okay? This can get you up a creek without a paddle pretty quickly if you're not mindful of the differences. Yeah?
Why would you do that?
Delete all by type?
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't you just exit the program? Either exit the program or just select everything in the scene and then push delete.
So the question was, could you just exit the program and then all your history is gone? No. That's the cool thing about your Maya project file, is that your history is kind of like a permanent undo queue. It's not going to go away when you restart the application, right? And if you have a whole bunch of objects that you're just trying to get back to something that's unreferenced and independent, and you don't have to worry about like dependencies and stuff, then you can just select that one option, delete all by type, and then boom, everything gets, the history for every single object in your scene gets knocked down to nothing.
Does it leave anything like lights or something like that? Or is it
Oh yeah, you're not actually deleting objects, you're deleting the command history for that object in any sort of, any sort of reference to that object.
okay, that's where I was getting confused. I was like, it just seems kind of silly to have an entire option for what is essentially a destroy all.
You're destroying your history, your command history, not the actual object itself. Yeah.
They're going to make this file size smaller, right?
It is, yeah, because your command history can make your file size get really, really big, okay? One thing that I can't show you at the moment, because I've been learning this week that there's a bug on the install of my instructor station copy version of Maya. If we were to go on the channel box, and I'm not going to click on it, yeah, okay, so here I've got P cylinder 1 down here. And if you look in your channel box, okay, see how it says inputs, poly cylinder 1? I can't click on it because it will automatically cause a crash for my instance of Maya, right? I don't know why. I need to ask computer services to reinstall. That's the input history for this object. If I was to click on that object, I can change the size of the cylinder, how many edges are going around the cylinder. It's pretty neat, actually, right? When I do my delete history, that goes away as well, right? So it really just gets your mesh down to just to geometry, just to polygons, edges, and verts, right? It's raw information, if you will. All right. So now, let's go back to my combined object. So now in object mode, when I select it, it looks like it's all glued together, but it's not. If we were to do some component level selecting, I'm just going to go grab my faces. I still have independent pieces here. I'm double clicking just by the way. So I still have the control that I need to continue to go in and modify the geometry on my train. It's just been combined into one mesh object versus many. Okay? And this is a good thing to do from time to time. Okay? Like the teapot. The teapot was exactly like this as well. It was a whole series of polygonal islands, all kind of jammed together, or all combined on one mesh object. Like I just did? Yeah, so I'm double clicking.
No, I mean like select a certain amount of faces, but like by rolling over them with the mouse.
Got it. Tab. Hold down the tab key, and then you can left click and drag on your mesh, and it will select whatever's underneath your cursor. All right. Let's go back into object mode here and continue our work. All right. I think real fast what I'm going to do is let's name this. This will be the fuselage. Okay. Here's one wheel. Here's another wheel. Let's get some specifics going on. This is the front or wheel front. Wheel rear. There we go. And let's duplicate this thing and get working on the other two. Since we've been talking about duplicating and grouping today, I want to show you what some of those other duplication commands will do, right? As I just mentioned, whenever we create a shape, this input over here, see how it says polycylinder 1? I can't click on that, and I apologize. So you'll have to look on your own screen, okay? I don't want my Maya to crash right now. Think of that like as the little packet of information, the command, if you will, that the computer is evaluating to generate and to create that little shape, right? If you were to click on it, right down below, it would expose a whole lot of parameters. You can change the number of sides on your cylinder. You do a whole bunch of stuff, right? This is called an input node, okay? This input node is feeding information into a network of different objects that's generating the shape. Super advanced. We're not going to talk about the details of that network today, okay? But if you wanted to make a big change to your object later on, maybe you want the number of sides going around your cylinder for those interior wheels to be different than the ones you have on the bigger wheels, right? If I was to take wheel front and just straight up do a duplicate, okay? Now I have wheel front selected. What don't you see over here in that input section? That polycylinder 1, the actual command that physically creates, see here's the original, wheel front, polycylinder 1. This is a command. This is some computer programming code, okay? That's responsible for generating the shape. When we duplicate something using Command D, that input node is not duplicated, right? So all we've done here is just duplicate the polygons and not the entire network of computer programming code that generates the polygons, okay? This can, at times, be a limiter on future modeling operations. So let me show you. I know, the Big Bang shows the levity of the entire situation, right? Oh my gosh! All right, let me go back in time. So I've just hit Command Z a number of times to go back. So I like to have all those input nodes come with me. Just in case I change my mind or I want to make some sort of root level change to my model, I can, right? So instead of doing edit, duplicate, check it out. We're going to do duplicate with special. Duplicate with special is pretty neat. This little square here, and you can see it on almost every Maya tool, they're going to expose all the properties for this tool. We're going to have a lot of conversations about duplicate with special because it's pretty great, okay? But for today, I want to do one thing. I want to duplicate the input graph, okay? Now when I duplicate with special, I get the exact same thing. Wheel front 1, I now have another one, but check it out. It also duplicated its input graph, all the input information that's generating this shape. It's just the safest way to work inside of Maya. Let's do it one more time. I'm going to do edit, duplicate with special, bloop, and I'm done.
So generally Shift Command D is just better to use.
It's just better, yeah.
Unless you have a specific reason not Shift Command.
You got it.
Got it.
You got it. I guess the larger point being is that there is a difference between the two, right? And I think as 3D modelers, it's really important that we understand specifically what Maya is doing on the back end. A lot of the confusion that we get we're banging our heads against Maya, is not understanding what the tools are doing and how they're producing the model in front of us. All right? All right. So as 3D modelers, as I mentioned, it's about working smart, not working hard. We're not going to model the entire train. Okay? That'd be really hard. There's a lot of pieces on our train that we want to duplicate on the other side of the train, right? That'd be cool. This is called mirroring. Great example is I did a big B-17 a while ago, and it turned out pretty good, actually. I'm pretty pleased with it. The B-17 was always my favorite World War II aircraft. And did I make the entirety of the B-17? No. I made one half. I focused all of my energy on one half of the model, and then I asked the computer, which is very good at duplicating things, to mirror it, to make the other half of the geometry for me. Okay? Mirroring is a pretty fantastic tool. It's going to duplicate things around the origin. Okay? So what I want here, excuse me, I want to turn off, there we go. Yep. What I did is I went into my image plane, and I changed its attribute to looking through side camera only. All right. So what I want here, all of these objects, I need to have on the other side as well. I need to have it be on the exact same place on the other side of the model, right? I don't want it to be close. I don't want it to be kind of meh. I want it to be exact, right? The wheels on the left should be in the exact same place as the wheels on the right side of the train, right? Kind of makes sense. Same with the car. You know, your chances are you're going to crash your car if the wheels are out of alignment a little bit. Same with the train, right? This is called mirroring. In mirroring inside of Maya, it's pretty fun, but it requires a little bit of investigation of some things, okay? First and foremost, we need to understand which axis we're going to be mirroring along, okay? Look at my train. I've done a good job of ensuring that the front of my train is facing the front of the scene. How do I know this? Yeah, if you look very carefully at the compass, this little arrow here is facing towards screen left. The front of my train is also facing towards screen left, so it's facing the front of the scene. So I want to try to model or mirror this geometry along the x-axis, right? The opposite side of the train. For us to do this, we have to make some selections first. Let's just go ahead and do it. I'm going to start with this front one, okay? You can see inside of Maya that the developers down at Autodesk have given us a really great indication on the grid as to where the center of all these axes are, okay? With this wheel selected, I can go up to my, my Edit Mesh toolbar. Excuse me. The Mesh toolbar, and we're going to choose Mirror. Let's just do it real fast and see what we get. Ha-ha! Boom! Cool, huh? Now I have a copy of that, of just the polygons on the other side of the x-axis, okay? Whenever we work with tools instead of Maya, often you'll get this little popover that will expose certain properties of the tool that will change how that tool behaves. And I want you to look at some of this stuff because there's some things in here that I want you to be aware of. Specifically, the one that gets people is the direction. My direction is on the negative side of the x-axis, right? If you look at it, the original geometry was sitting on the positive side, so the duplicate was going to be placed on the negative, okay? Depending on who's used Maya before you, that's going to determine the value that's in that channel box because all the tool properties are sticky from the previous session, right? So check it out. You can actually change this value. Let's put it to plus. See what we get. Ooh. Yeah? That's not what we were after. Usually this is the time when folks go, you know what? I'll just duplicate it and move it to the other side of the x-axis because I don't know what's going on here. The direction of our mirroring operation is going to determine the result. So be mindful of this. You just can't do whatever you want to do, right? You got to be careful with how these tool properties are going to be set. So I want to put mine back to minus. Ha-ha. And there we go. Okay? Let's do it again. I'm going to hit the Q key to drop the tool. And I think you can even do all of these at the same time. Let's tempt fate here a little bit. So under the Mesh pull-down menu, and then Mirror. FYI, before I click the button, if we look at the tool settings, a lot of the things that we saw on that popover are in the settings as well too. So just know that you can have some global changes here. Okay, so let's mirror. Boink, life is good. Q key to go back to the selection tool. And now I'm ready to rock and roll.
Hey, Pat.
Yes, sir.
So the way I did the wheels was I just made a giant cylinder and just extruded the cylinder out. Is there any way where I can like mirror loop cuts starting from every side?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
Yep. All right. Have a good one. All right. So the mirror command is going to be a big one that we're going to use for this week's homework assignment. We only, we're always looking for efficiencies, ways for us to get to the final result a lot more faster than just by doing every single piece by hand, right? Yeah, that's maddening. Okay. We want the computer to do, to help us out as much as we can. All right. A couple other things that you're going to need for this week's homework assignment. Many of you guys were asking about color. Okay, and I want you guys to start experimenting with color. We're going to have an entire day. It's not next week, so it'd be the week after. Okay, was that a Valentine's Day? It's going to be my Valentine's Day present to you guys. All right, you're welcome. I love each and every one of you in your own special way. Yeah.
Move one of the mirrored objects. Will it move the other one as well?
No.
Are they synced or?
They're synced now, so they're in object level, an object mode. Okay, they're one piece. They're one piece.
Is there a way to like desync them? So if like you mirrored something on one side, but then wanted that one side to be just slightly altered.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So you don't have to desync them. Just select a different component. Because right now, on object level, I'm getting everything, right?
Yeah.
However, if I was to go and switch my selection state to faces, now I can just grab that other one and do whatever I want with it. Okay. Shoot, I think probably what I'll end up doing, if I was making this train, I'd take all of these, all of the wheels. Honestly, I'd combine them. Okay. And of course, I'd delete the history. Which one of these three icons will delete the history? Yeah, the X. Bloop. And now I have all of my wheels on one object. Okay. All right, so color. Let's talk about color real fast, because color is a fun thing, okay? Like I said, we're going to have an entire day talking about color. In the Maya world, they're called materials, okay? So this is going to turn into a much more comprehensive conversation, but at the very least, I want you guys to start playing around with it and start colorizing your polygons, because that's fun and it's rad, right? Let's just do it real quick. So for us to work inside of for us to apply color to our objects, we have to create some materials, okay? Our entire material creation and management system is a window called the hypershade, okay? I feel like I'm going into the future with the hypershade, right? Gotta love Autodesk. They have the hypershade, and then they have the hypergraph, because that's never going to be confused, right? The hypershade and the hypergraph, right? Anyways, okay. So the hypershade, that's this button here. Bloop. Click on it. It's a beast. It's a big part of our workflow. Okay. This is the place where we get to manage all of our materials, create our materials, and then edit the properties of all of our materials. Okay. Like I said, this is a beast of a window, and it's pretty deep. And it's going to be probably the most difficult stumbling block that you guys are going to kind of face over the next 16 weeks, okay? The hypershade, especially when we start incorporating textures, is tough, okay? But since we're just going to be doing low-level material work today, it's pretty easy, okay? Let's go in and create some materials that we then can apply to any number of polygons inside of our scene. I think I'm just going to make two, maybe like a blue and a yellow, kind of similar to what we have in the backdrop item. All right, now the first thing that we have to do is that we have to create some materials, okay? Up at the top here, this is going to show you a list, a whole series of icons of the materials that are currently associated with this Maya project file. I don't want to use any of these, okay? I want to make my own. We do that down here, in the Create section of the Hypershade. Now there's a bunch of them, and I get it. Really, I do. There's a lot, okay? And this, in every sense, speaks to the depth of the material and shading engine inside of Maya. Remember, this is literally the exact same app that they're using to make Star Wars, okay? So it's deep. It's deep. There's a lot of stuff going on. But here's what I would recommend that you do, just for kind of today. This is a search field up here at the top. Type in Lambert, or just Lamb. The Lambert material is probably one of the more simple materials that we can have. It's just kind of basic color and a basic understanding of how, basic surface characteristics. It's just super simple, okay? If you double click on it, it's going to create it. Now, don't worry about all this. We'll have a time to talk about that going forward in the future. But notice that we now have Lambert 2. This is the one that I just created. We get a cool little shader ball over here that gives us a preview of what this material is going to look like. And down in the properties section, let's give it a good name. I'm just going to call this blue. And of course, the color will be a lovely shade of blue. Let's find a lovely shade of blue. A little more saturation in it, something like that. That works. All right. Ta-da! Let's make one more. We need a blue, and maybe we need like a yellow. So same thing. I'm going to go back over here. I already have the Lambert still in my search field, but I'll just double-click the Lambert shader again, and now I have Lambert 3. Let's give it a good name. This will be yellow. Make the color green. No, I'm not going to make the color green. I'll make a nice shade of yellow. When I was in high school, there was a band that some of my friends were a part of, and they thought they were like the coolest guys on campus, right? Because the name of their band was Red. Right, and they spelled it R-H-E-D. They thought they were super rad, and then the font for their band was in green. They thought they were like the cool. I was like, come on, guys, right? Anyways.
Anybody who's colorblind is wondering what they're called.
Yeah. All right. So we have two new Lambert materials. One whose color is simply blue, and the other one is yellow. We're done. That's all we're going to do in the Hypershade today. We're just going to create those two materials, and we're going to close it. Now, to apply those colors to our polygons, we have to physically select the polygons. We can't do this in object mode. We've got to do this in component mode, right? So I'm in my faces selection state, and let's just do the body. Okay. So I got the body of my train selected, and this is the part that even I don't like, okay? You got to right-click and hold, and you're going to get this crazy list. And way down at the bottom of this crazy list, and I apologize, let me see if I can zoom in, are these options, okay? So we got assign new material, which is not what we want. Aha, assign existing material, and dun-da-da-da, look, there it is. Here's blue, Lambert 1, which is the default material that comes with every Maya scene, and then yellow. Let's just do blue. Bloop. I bet you anything, yep, my polygons are blue. Let's do it a couple more times, okay? Because I think I want to have all my smokestacks be yellow. So I'll right-click, navigate to the bottom of this crazy long list, and under the Assign Existing Material option, I'll choose yellow. And now they'll be yellow. Voila!
I forgot, how do you select all the faces really quick?
I just double-clicked. I just double-clicked. You got it. Yep, you got it. They're going to select what are called the contiguous faces, which are all the faces that are welded together. Yep.
Does that include the top faces, the top and bottom faces as well?
You got it. Yep. You got it. Yep. They're in there. Hypershade. So the easiest way to get into the Hypershade is to navigate to the top of your screen and hit this little blue shader ball icon. It is a window, so if you're getting comfortable going into the Windows pull-down menu at the top of your screen, it's under the rendering editor. And there it is, Hypershade. Same place, same thing, 6 to 1, half a dozen to another.
And mirroring. How to do that again?
Mirroring is under the mesh command. All right. So lastly, before we escape for the day, let's talk about rendering, because this is something that's going to be something that you're going to be doing all the time. And now that we're getting a little bit more experience with rendering things in Maya, there's some nuance to the rendering system that I want to highlight real fast. Okay, let's just fire off a render real fast. Wonderful, right? Best render. Why did it turn out black?
Because there's no light.
There's no lights, right? There's no lights. This is a battle that all of us were kind of fighting during lab today, okay? And it'll take you a couple different times, you know, until you're really good at it. You got to put a light in your scene. I'm just going to blast an area light in here. And I mentioned this to a number of people, but I want to make sure that everyone hears this, okay? Here's my Arnold shelf. I'm going to load in an area light. I'm just going to position this light over here. The line coming out the front of the area light represents the orientation of that light. Okay. Let's make a picture. And I can barely see it now. It's easier to see on my screen, but on the projector it's super dark. So what do I need to do? Increase the intensity of that light. Yeah. I like where the light is currently coming from. Pretty pleased with that. So I'm going to go back into my viewport, select it, and of course the attribute editor is going to expose all the properties that I'm looking for this light. Yeah?
And you're using the Arnold whatnot, and does that come with Maya automatic? Is that automatically a plugin that's automatically installed in Maya? Is it something that I have to download off of somewhere else, or what?
So the question was, does Arnold come with the base install of Maya? Yes.
Okay, and so I just have to enable it through the plugin?
You got it.
Already be enabled?
It should already be enabled. And I'm going to put should in gigantic finger quotes because even in here is not loading. All right? And that's actually an excellent question. And I'm sorry to derail us from the lights, but this is something that is going to be an issue because it's already turning into an issue and I got to figure out a solution. If Arnold doesn't show up, chances are it is installed on your machine. Arnold is a plugin and we have to load our plugins. Okay? So if we go to the top of the screen where it says Window, we load plugins in the Plugin Manager. And you can find that under Settings and Preferences. It's right there. Okay? When you click on this, you'll get this crazy list. And it's crazy. There's a lot of plugins inside of Maya. I don't even know where the Arnold plugin is. And I'm horrible with lists, so I'm not going to sit there and try to consume that, right? However, here's the shortcut. Search for MTOA. Anyone want to take a guess as to what MTOA stands for? To Arnold. That's what it means. Yeah, Maya to Arnold. Maya to Arnold. That's it. Because you're piping the Maya system into the Arnold rendering system. That's kind of how it's working. But what we want to make sure is enabled is loaded, because that's going to load the plugin. And if auto load is enabled, every time you launch Maya, it should automatically load the plugin upon launch. Should automatically load the plugin upon launch. Okay?
This is a random question, but when I downloaded my thing, I have a window that pops up every time I run Maya.
Okay. What's it say? That
It's just like, it looks like it's running text. Oh, yeah.
could be the script editor. Could be. Yeah, it may be the script editor, or it could be the input line for the for Mel. You probably can close it, and it wouldn't damage anything.
There's no way I can like disable that from happening. It's just annoying.
Yeah, that would be annoying. I don't know. You know, I'll be honest with you. I haven't actually sat in front of a Windows machine in probably 15 years.
I'm pretty sure it's the input line because it does say input something when the window pops up, but you can exit out though.
Yeah. So real quick here, I want to show you this. This is actually kind of pretty neat. Right now, we're just in the default render window. And any change that I make to my lights is going to require me to re-render, right? And I think it was Cody. Cody was doing a render earlier of his Parthenon that was taking a good 3 or 4 minutes to render it out, right? That's maybe a little bit longer, right? That, you know, I don't want to have to wait 3 or 4 minutes to see if my picture is going to look cool or not, right? I want to see something kind of almost instantaneously. So let me show you an alternative way of getting access to your info. Of course, these two buttons here, this is going to open your render window, the little clapboard with the eyeball on it, and this is actually going to draw the picture, make it render, okay? If you're in the Arnold shelf, this window here, it's going to open up a live preview of the render. It's not actually going to draw the picture, but it's going to be a preview of it. It's going to be a live preview. Check it out. It's going to look kind of similar, right? And you're probably saying, Pat, that looks just like my render, but watch what happens when I start making changes. Okay? So I changed the intensity over my attribute editor, and I can see those updates. Again, this is a preview, it's not final quality, but at least it's better than nothing, right? So now I can start troubleshooting and tweaking my render without having to go in and spend 1,000 hours doing X, Y, and Z, right? Yeah. Right, so I need some more lights in here, in all honesty. One thing that people were running into were these sliders. Okay, and I'm actually going to hit undo. A couple steps here. If you hate these sliders in Maya, you're not alone. I hate them as well. They're probably the most frustrating thing for all of us to work with. Okay, and I think we can see the frustration of these sliders right in front of us. Right now, the intensity value is at 1. If I do this, what does it say to you? 100, right? Yeah. But in the UI kind of world, what does that say to you?
That 100 is max.
That's the maximum value for this input field, right? It's not the case. In every single input field, we can overdrive the values or the sliders values by manually going in and changing that value, okay? So point being, don't think that the maximum exposure value you have is 5, okay? You can overdrive this past the boundaries of your sliders, okay? Okay. So I'm going to put this to 20. That looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. Preview is kind of chugging away. Wonderful. Let's put one more light in here. Now with this second light, I may have to do a couple things. There we go. Let's try it again. Oh, it's no liking that second light. Oh, because it's not even pointing at my thing. That's why. There we go. You guys just saw me do it, and sometimes the preview window gets a little stuck. So just stopping the preview and then restarting it sometimes will kind of force it to update if you're not seeing an update live in front of you. All right. So I'm pretty happy with that. Let's just call that one done. It's not done in any case, but let's actually perform a real render now, okay? When you hit this little play button in the Arnold shelf, it's just a preview. This is the only button to physically fire off a full-blown render. So now we're physically drawing pixels, and it's creating an image for us, okay? Many of you guys did some really great work for your homework in your lab, but when it came time to save your image, okay, and I'm just going to save this as a test, and I want it to be, I'll just save it as a PNG. I want to put it on my desktop. There we go. All right.
And it magically gets dimmer.
Oops. There we go. Go away. All right. I saved it as a PNG, which made the background transparent. Let me save it as a JPEG, excuse me, so that we can see really what we're after. Many apologies. File, save image. There it is, JPEG. All right. I didn't save it to desktop. No, I did. Yeah. Okay. So let's do some comparison. That does not equal that. Apples to oranges, right? These are not the same. So what in the world happened? Why is the picture that I saved to my desktop extraordinarily dark? Doesn't look anything like the actual render, right? Because the picture on the left, this is the render in Maya, right? And this is what was saved. What was saved is significantly darker, right? Has everything to do with the color profile, okay? Maya is really made, it's a high-end app, okay? And when you're doing the next like Harry Potter film, okay, or the next Star Wars film, you're going to be generating data sets that are intense, okay? Rendering images for the feature film scale at 4K and above requires an image size that has a lot of data, okay? A lot of data and a color profile in any number of color profiles depending on how the compositors have chosen to work, right? So what we want to do is, we love working in that world, but we're not high-end compositors. So we don't need to work with the raw image, okay? If you're a photographer and you're used to shooting in RAW, or if you're used to doing this type of image editing in Photoshop, go crazy, man. It's there and waiting for you, okay? But for the rest of us, myself included, we want to do a color managed image, okay? And this is going to save the image in the same color profile as your computer monitor. So it's going to be sRGB or Adobe sRGB, right? So then it turns into what you see in the render window is exactly what's going to be saved, okay?
And that's just to prevent conflicts when you're changing around colors and whatever in other programs?
Well, it's a color profile. So we're mapping colors within our color spectrum to specific values, okay? In the raw workflow, all that data is available. At the end of the day, every image gets mapped to a specific color profile. If your spectrum of colors is this, our color profiles for our computer monitor is a certain portion of that spectrum. We start with everything, and then we map all those colors to whatever our output monitor spectrum looks like, right? It's a deep issue. I'm not going to go into any more than that. But for us, the takeaway is just really make sure that colored manage image is on before you hit save. And I'll just save this as test 2. It's a JPEG on my desktop. Hit save. That way, yeah, there it is. There's test 2. Looks exactly the way it looked in my render window. Here's test 1. And you can see the importance of that colored managed image when we save out our JPEG. Okay? Critical going forward. We want to make sure that what we rendered is produced equally in the JPEG that we save from the app.
And where was that window to edit?
Yeah, so let's go back into Maya. I'm going to open my render view, my render window. So you do it at the File, Save Image option. And then it's just right there. It's easily missed. It really is. It's super easily missed. See, we're embedding the color profile into the image. All right. Other questions before we wrap up today? Yeah?
I noticed on your model you made, you had bezels on them. How do you do that? It looked like your wheels had some bezels on them.
And I did. Yeah, if you want to do that, I was going to save this for next week, but there's no reason not to do it. Beveling and adding little radiuses on our shapes is always a cool idea. I really recommend that people start looking into this, right? Let me just go into my modeling toolkit. You do it in edges, okay? And I'm simply going to double-click, there we go, double-click the boundary edge of that wheel. I understand that it's really hard to see, but all the edges around the front face of the wheel have been selected, okay? So we got to start with the selection first. And then simply, it's just the bevel tool. This one right here in our modeling toolkit. If you turn it on, this is what it's going to look like initially. You get this really cool popover that has some extra tools in here. The ones that you want to focus on is not depth, it's fraction. I always mix that up because in my mind I'm changing the depth, but it's actually the fraction that determines the amount, the size of the radius.
Do you know why they call fraction?
I have no idea. And then the segments increases the quality of the radius. Don't go nuts on the segments, right? Because you're physically adding polygons into the scene itself. There has to be a darn good reason to be over 4 or 5, in my opinion. Okay, true story. I had an individual wave me over to their machine once, and they're like, "Pat, Maya's crashing on me, like consistently, like every other step, Maya was crashing." And she's like, "Why is it crashing on me?" And so I start looking at our project file, and I noticed, and I forget what we were modeling, that there's this big dark band on the model, right? And I went, "What's that?" Because those look weird. And so we zoomed in, and she had done an edge bevel. And to make sure that the edge looked absolutely perfect, she put like 1,000 in that segment section. And she made like 2 million polygons around like one small little band. And Maya went, "I can't do this." And it just kept crashing over and over and over again. So you'll have some problems if you really drive that value up.
Glad Maya doesn't have any feelings.
Yeah, right? So depth is the size. Oh, fraction is the size. And depth, this is actually cool. You can actually go in or you can go out. That's what depth does. I apologize. So you can do little insets, which is fun. 1 is out. 0, this is called a chamfer. When it's just a linear transition between those two different planes. Okay.
What if I want to do a chamfer from the middle of a wheel? How would you do that?
What?
Well,
You want to do a chamfer? I'll let you figure that out. You know, I'll let you figure that out, Mighty Explorer. Right?
probably something like an edge loop, and then you just.
Yeah. There are 1,000 ways to get there. Right? But that's beveling. It's pretty simple. Pretty straightforward. Okay. All right. Let's just zip back over to Canvas real fast and make sure that we're all on the same page. When you're done with this project, please make sure you're submitting both the project file and a render. Okay? I've supplied you guys with the reference image that we used as the image plane inside of Maya today. Here's a good little target as to where we're going. You're welcome. I've helped you out a little bit here. Try to get there as close as you can. Look at these specific requirements for this project. Okay? So you're doing the locomotive and the coal car. Okay? If you can see it in the image plane, put it in the model itself. You're also doing the railroads and the railroad ties too. So you're going to be doing a lot of duplicating in this project, which is part of learning this process. Okay? There's a lot of muscle memory in 3D, and we're kind of getting through that initial stage of learning how all these things work together. Please make sure you're modeling at the origin and that the train is facing along the positive side of the z-axis. Okay? So the front of the train must be facing the front of the scene. This one is just really the no crossed edges or vertices in the mesh. Just make sure you don't over bevel something. And let me show you what that looks like. Because it may not work with what I have down here. But if you keep going, yeah, it's going to stop at the edges, which is good. In other applications, what happens is that the bevel will continue going down that side, and all the edges will go like this. They'll cross, and then you'll have flipped geometry, and it'll turn black. So it's not going to be too much of a problem for us. So I don't think you'll have to really focus on it, which is nice. Okay. In addition, please make sure you're rendering at 1280 by 720. Okay. This is an industry standard frame size. How do we change this? Does anyone remember how to change the frame size?
Is it in the render thing?
Yeah, it's in your render settings.
What happened? Oh, yeah.
Okay. And it's at the bottom. Image size. 1280 by 720. Okay? And you're good to go.
And is the resolution like standard as well?
The resolution, yeah. Yeah, the resolution is not something that we have to worry too much about. If you're making images for the print world, where the pixels per inch is something that we have to consider very directly, then resolution becomes a factor. For us in the television and film world, 72. Doesn't matter. Just leave it at 72. I've been making images for the feature film world for almost 20 years now, and I've never used anything but 72. All right, questions? Good luck. I'll see you next week.